Steve from the garden. Today's video I'm going to be talking about the indoor garden. Many of us will start seeds indoors ahead of the main growing season. We do this for things like peppers and tomatoes that need like a long lead time before the main growing season starts. If you have a setup like this, then you have everything you need to do an indoor garden during the cold months. The smaller leafy greens like lettuce and spinach are perfect for indoor gardening, but also things like basil and dill can be grown indoors too. You can see I have my setup over here, which I use for seed starting, but I'm also using it for indoor gardening during the winter time. Now this is my container of lettuce. Now this just consists of a low profile storage container that I filled with potting soil and mixed in some balanced organic fertilizer. This past weekend I harvested about 1 pound of lettuce from this container, and as the plants were growing I would just pick off the outer leaves as needed. Just for an example of what I was doing in terms of picking out the outer leaves, I would just come in, pick off some of these ones on the outside, until I had enough to suit whatever my needs were for that week. The plants now are getting big, so I'm going to do a harvest of the large plants and have another set of small plants which I can plant back in here. For harvesting the large plants, I'm just going to take a sharp knife and I'm going to cut just above where the stem meets the leaves. There we go. Then once I've got the main part of the plant that I want, then I will cut the stem off just below the soil, leaving the roots in the container. These two plants I only put in like 3 days ago, and before I put them in they were this size. So as soon as I put them in, they really grew quite quickly after the transplant. Now that I harvested the large plant, I have 2 spots here where I can put 2 new plants in. So I'm going to put 2 romaine lettuces in. One here. I'll put one here. Then just water them in like I would any other plant I was transplanting. This is my container of water spinach. I did start a video on this about a month ago, and I'll put a link to that up here. So you can see that everything's growing good. They're nice and green. And this is another plant that I can grow indoors right through the winter time. I'm using a 2 foot by 4 foot shelving unit. So each shelf is 2 feet deep by 4 feet wide. And I just got these LED lights that I use for providing the light. You can see over here, I just suspend them with a wire. That way I can adjust the height as I need to. So like for the lettuce that we just put in, I lowered the light so that they're closer to the plants. On the upper shelf, I have my water spinach. Now this needs a little more heat than the lettuce does. And I found that if I just drape some plastic over 3 sides, that the temperature will stay right about 80 degrees during the time that the lights are on. Now I am growing this in the basement, and the basement will be about 62 degrees. So when the lights go off, the temperature drops. You can see here, right on the shelf, where the lettuce is growing, that the temperature is at 73 degrees. You can also kind of see the tube lights I'm using. So this is just a pair of LED tube lights, and I have a pair of blurple lights in the back. It's been 2 days since I transplanted the lettuce, but before we take a look at that, I want to talk about why I left the roots of the old plants in the soil. Now it's the soil biology that actually feeds our plants the nutrients that they need, and that soil biology concentrates around the roots of the plant. So by leaving the old roots in, my transplant now has a ready access to that soil biology that's ready to feed the plant. Well, this is what it looks like now, just 2 days later. Actually, the very next morning when I was on my way to work, and looked at these plants, I could already tell that they had grown just in that short time period. Here's a side-by-side comparison from planting day until today, and you can see just how much plants grew just in those 2 days. To extend this out, what I would do is with these smaller plants, once they start growing out, when I cut them out, I would leave those roots behind and remove the roots of the previous generation of plants so I'd have more room to plant new ones. Or another thing I could do is I could start just another container so that that one would have fresh soil in it. It wouldn't have the soil biology like this one does, but it would still go and establish that soil biology. It would just take a little bit longer. In the past, I also tried growing lettuce through hydroponics, and boy, does lettuce grow fast in that system. I mean, I'd go from like planting the seed, and then 30 days later, I would have a full-size, ready to harvest plant. But overall, I think growing it here in the regular soil is probably a little healthier since there's no artificial chemicals involved. Anyways, that's the end of this video. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you got something out of it. Maybe this is something you'll consider for yourself the next cold season.